暴走戦士がやってくる。さあスパイダーの仮面、クモの巣の仮面はアニマルだ。不気味なクソ音が聞こえている。アイアンマンのテーマが流れた。さあこのクモの巣のペイントでアニマル長州やつを捉えようというのか。さあ鈴木準備 OK だ。インタータックのベルトはもうもらった。世界タッグ5人優勝、元 AWA 世界タッグチャンピオン、文字通り世界ナンバーワンのチームがやってくる。ハリケーンズを百竜を国際決命軍を破り、あとは
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Steven Cimino Says Boom Show, issue number 42. And oh boy, we got a good one today. But before we get into it, Niall, tell us what we got to do because we usually don't have a clue.
I know. So that's why I'm here. So everyone, make sure to look below, click that subscribe button, and smash that bell to get notifications when we go live and we upload awesome new content like this episode you're watching right now. And gentlemen, I'm ready. I'm feeling the rush.
Ooh.
Let's hit the mat.
All right, Steve. Just hold on, Steve. Just sit back and hold on. I got a lot to get out right now. We usually do the legends of the comic books, and we usually always get into the weeds, get the backstories. But today we're going to do something a little different, but that has a lot to do with comic books. Now, when I was collecting comics back in the day, there was always something that coincided with that, especially during the years of 1982 to 1992, which were considered the golden age of wrestling. That's when wrestling had the biggest stars and the most colorful. You had your Hulk Hogan's, your Randy Savages, your Ricky Steamboats, Andre the Giants, Ric Flairs. But there was one team of two guys that captured my imagination and sent me into oblivion. That would be the LOD, the Road Warriors. Now, there's nothing I can say that how much they impacted my life. Obviously, they were inspired by the Mad Max movie, The Road Warrior from 1981, which was incredible. But their impact was they changed pop culture. Everybody started copying what they did. It was incredible. But to me, growing up in Massachusetts, I was about 15, growing up in Waltham, Massachusetts, about 15 minutes from Boston. We always had the WWF. Everybody had the WWF. All the kids used to talk about it and all that stuff. But I used to spend my weekends in Cape Cod at Buzzards Bay, Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and we had cable there. And when you had cable, we had TBS. And TBS, the superstation, played the NWA. Now, that was incredible because all the other kids didn't know. So I would come back to school the next day on that Monday, and they would all ask me, like, what happened with Ric Flair? What happened with the Road Warriors? And it was the perfect time. I had one up, Steve, on all these kids because everybody wanted to know. Because everybody knew Hulk Hogan and all that stuff, but they didn't really know what went on with the Road Warriors and all that stuff. And oh my God, we were incredible. it was incredible that I got to see that. And I got to see it during the heyday, 86 and 87, which was the pinnacle of those years and when the Road Warriors were in their prime. So I was so obsessed from the beginning. Now I'll show them the first one. Here's me on the beaches of Cape Cod. I don't know, 9, 8, being Hawk. I had to be Hawk because who else could I be? I was just so enthralled by him. You know, I couldn't be the Hulk because the Hulk didn't exist, but I could be Road Warrior Hawk. And then there was these, Steve. Come on, Steve. You remember these wrestling magazines. The thing about the wrestling magazines, we used to trade them, and I never told you this, Steve, but while I was collecting comics during those heydays, we were also collecting wrestling magazines, and they were just like comic books. You could trade, buy, bribe kids with them. It was incredible. What we're showing here on these are the 4 most iconic Road Warrior covers. And if you look at that first one, the Road Warriors Tag Team of the Year, that was their rookie year. And they won the Tag Team of the Year in that time, and that is considered that is the very first cover that they ever appeared on. So that was awesome. But Steve, back then too, you know, you really couldn't see the matches other than like the cheap matches, you know, when they beat up the regular people. But there were 3 cassettes that were like porn to all the kids in the neighborhood: the Lords of the Ring, the Road Warriors Road to the Championship, and the Road Warriors, the Hawk and the Animal. The first one, the Lords of the Ring, was incredible because you got all like the Florida, the Mid-South, the Georgia, the NWA stuff that nobody could see. It also had a match with the Road Warriors versus the Fabulous Ones, which was incredible. And then that one in the middle, Steve, there's a match in there that had Hawk and Animal against Kurt Hennig and his father, Larry the Axe Hennig. And when they're leaving the ring, they get into a brawl with the crowd out there. It was incredible. We used to watch that all the time. I must have seen these 3 cassettes. I'm talking maybe 1,000 times each. It was incredible. And not just that, the Road Warriors also were all over pop culture because that's when all the toys were coming out. And when those toys came out, here's some of the greatness. You had the AWA figures from Remco. You had the costumes. You had then later you had the Hasbros, and then also the Tonka wrestling buddies. But Steve, do you see those AWA tag team wrestlers there? The AWA one? Okay. What was awesome about that? During that time, the He-Mans were the biggest things in the world at that time, and they were made exactly the same. Almost, they mimicked the He-Man bodies. And there was also an offshoot. They were also an offshoot figure. They made Arak, they made Hercules, they made the Warlord, but they used the same body, so they made the AWA figures. And those came in 1985. They were actually the very first American wrestling figures. And just so you know, they're right here with me. And Steve, these guys used to beat the crap out of all those He-Man figures. Skeletor and He-Man got the crap kicked out of them. Me and my friends, we had the rings.
Tag team extravaganza! Let the battle royale begin! Looks like Hawk is about to drop in on the fabulous one. Oh, the Baron's after the Animal. Other planet. Will you look at this? Rick Martel is throwing Steve Kern right out of the ring. Oh my! And the Hawk has Stan Lane all tied up, and he's mad!
The Battle Royale playset comes complete with 6 figures, referee, and official wrestling ring from Remco.
And they killed, oh my God, they never lost the belts. As you can see, they still have the titles. Oh, poor He-Man, they got killed and all that stuff. And Steve, I got to just tell you, in 6th grade, me and a kid, Dana Bork, we watched that Road Warrior one when they fought the people in the crowd. I woke up on a Sunday. We woke up Monday morning. We woke up at his house, and I'm thinking, let's go in as the Road Warriors. I shaved my head with the two shaves, and he shaved a mohawk. And then we went into his mother's cabinet, and we got her makeup. We go into school that day. This was when I was in the 6th grade. We walk in. All the kids think we're the hot shit. They're going, look at these guys. Whoa, whoa. Mr. MacArthur, the head principal, sees us. His eyes open like that. I'll never forget the quote. What the hell are you guys doing? Get into my office. He sent us home for the day. We got kicked out of school because of the road warriors. Wait, hey, I got
you
another.
won't hurt anyone.
No, here's another one. In 9th grade, we already started wrestling people. Like we all kids would get together and we would like have people come see us. And me and a friend Brian, we made these 4 spikes and then we put hoses all around it and we put a mattress. We made a ring, a makeshift ring, and we were going to have a big event on Saturday. And we're both thinking, how awesome can we be the Road Warriors? Yes, we shaved our heads again. I shaved my head as Hawk. He shaved his. No, Brian didn't shave his head. He kept because he had nice hair. And we were thinking, what could we do? We ran down to the high school. We broke into the football locker room. We stole 2 football pads.
Oh no.
One for him and one for me. And then we went to the hardware store. We spray painted them black. And then we took those 5-inch nails. We took out the screws and we stuck them through the football pads. And it worked so awesome. When the kids all came, they all came to see us, and all the parents, we had the makeup and we had the spike pads that we stole from the high school. It was genius. It was beautiful. You can say what you want, but I was there. We were crazy. I was king of the mountain there. But then there was one day in 1991, Steve. I went to a Dream Machine with a bunch of friends. I walk in and I see the greatest wrestling video game, arcade game of all time. It was incredible. I loved it so much. And now that I make a little bit of money, I had to buy one for there it is, the WrestleFest. There was WWF Superstars, but there was nothing better than WrestleFest. And why this was so good, Steve, I don't know if you remember this video game. I loved it because you couldn't be the Road Warriors. You had to beat them. They were the champions of the game. You had to make a team to fight them. It was everything I wanted. And all I could think about is, how do I steal this friggin' huge cabinet and bring it to my house? But you could do, Steve, you could do the Doomsday device. Niall, show him the gift.
Wow, that was earthquake.
Yeah, there was nothing like it. And then it never ended there, Steve. Then, as I got older, as you know, I started pumping the iron. There was 2 of my biggest inspirations were Bruce Lee and Road Warrior Hawk. Come on, Steve, look at me. That was all for the Road Warriors, as you know. And during those years from 1990 to 1992, that's when the Road Warriors first came to the WWF, and they were the Legion of Doom. But those 3 years, they always came to the Boston Gardens, and they always came to the Hartford Civic Center, which was both ways. They were kind of close to where I was. Me and my friend Al went every single time to see them. It was the freaking greatest thing. I never missed a show. So my God, I was obsessed. And then finally in 2016, as I was, I'm an agent for all these comic guys. I'm pretty big time. And, my friend was an agent for all the wrestlers. And he told me, he knew I loved the Road Warriors. And he said to me, he goes, hey, I'm going to have Animal. He goes, you want to help me for 3 days? So for 3 days, I worked with Animal. I got to know him very well. We corresponded all the way till his death, but we had a blast going out to eat. He locked up with me and he sent shivers down my spine. It was incredible. I couldn't believe how hard he could grip me. And as you know, Steve, like that.
Hey, Bryn, this is Animal from the Legion of Doom, Road Warrior Animal. And your dad has ruined your life. I hear you're a big wrestling fan. Well, here, this is a present for you from the Animal. Oh, what a rush.
That was my love and passion. So I was so fortunate to get to know Joe Laurinaitis, Animal, that we talked about Hawk and Hawk's crazy life, and it was unbelievable. So that is my history. Steve, I also know you have a history with the Road Warriors. Why don't you give me your little 2 cents? Oh.
Now, of course, being in England, we didn't benefit from all that magnificent exposure to the WWE and AWA and NWA and the WWF. We didn't get any of that. We had the cheesiest English wrestling you've ever seen in your life. Little tiny skinny guys and huge fat walloping dinosaurs.
Round one of 8 5-minute rounds. And a pretty good sidestep there by Gorgeous Gilbert.
Guys like Big Daddy, Giant Haystacks.
Yeah.
Okay. And then one day, one of my friend said, "Hey, I have a video. It's a WrestleMania event." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And that was our exposure to American wrestling. And I think it was it had Big John Studd was in there. And I remember I saw this guy and I was like, what in the hell? It's 100 feet tall, 20 foot wide. He could have broken any English wrestler in half. He'd have broken Big Daddy's back. You know, and it was the first time I had seen real wrestling physiques. Okay. And of course, at the time I was already into comics. And so for me, it was like, wow, comics, wrestlers. When I see the wrestlers come out, the spandex and the capes and the masks and the face paint, I was like, whoa. And that was, funny enough, it was one of the first times I thought, well, if I don't become a comic artist, I'll become a wrestler. So, I know you know, but you know, whenever I was in the gym, whenever there was a really big guy in there, I'd be like, God sakes, you can wrestle, right? And he goes, no, I'm not a wrestler. But my eyes opened in 1991 when I first came to the States, and I used to train down at Gold's Gym, Venice. That's when I saw the monsters. I saw Goliaths, and I was like, oh my God. That's the first time I met Bill Kazmaier, who of course also wrestled, World's Strongest Man. Yeah. So I was fully aware of these guys, and at that time I began to able to watch the TV, and that I didn't get to. The first time I think I saw the Road Warriors, I think it was like 1991. It was definitely 1991. And the first thing, again, you have to be someone who's a gym person to get this. When I saw Hawk's neck, I just couldn't get over it. And by the way, when you see a picture of his neck, it's double the size of a human. It's the biggest thing in the world. And I trained for a long time, and I got up to over 300 pounds when I was at my biggest. My neck was never that big. And of course, Animal, what a beast of a man. Just a beast of a man. And again, in recent years, I managed to watch some older stuff where they would have these bench press competitions, there'd be Animal bench pressing, and then someone would come out and throw the weights on him. I was like, God sakes, how dangerous is that? So finally, a couple of years ago, was at Chicago Comic Con. And I was busy setting up and doing stuff like that, supposed to be doing torpedo business. And someone came by and said, Animal's here. And I was like, are you kidding me? I just put my stuff down and left the booth. I said, guys, get on with it. I'm going to go see Animal. And I walk along, I see him, and I was like, I said, Animal. I said, this is incredible. I said, I've got to shake your hand. And this is where I put my hand forward. And the biggest and strongest hand that I have ever seen came out. Yeah. And I literally enveloped. I got big hands. I'm not small. I was like, God sakes. And I said it to him. I said, you got the biggest damn hands in the world. And he put a little smile and he goes, yeah, I've heard I got big hands. And I was like, this is incredible. And again, I spent an hour over there, by the way. I should have been at work, setting up my booth, getting stuff done. I spent an hour, and I was like, oh my God, he was telling me stuff about Hawk, telling me stuff like this. And I I got some photos, of course. So I have my photos. I managed to put the pads on.
Yeah.
Put the belt on. Okay. I have one of those. Niall, I will send you that picture.
Yeah.
So,
Niall, Steve, you sent me the picture too, and the little quote he puts underneath it, he goes, "Look at the size of his hands."
yeah, because you can see it. We're both like this.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what the hell? Those slabs of meat. I can only imagine being in the ring and being manhandled by those things and being chopped. I mean, oh my God. So yeah, it's definitely really funny because I didn't really know you at that point.
Yeah.
How we both ended up really liking those guys, having photographs taken, and loving their look. They're very superhero-ish. We both love Mad Max, of course, because when I was younger, I wanted to be humongous. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just, again, another one of those little crossing things. And I am very thankful. Unfortunately, I would have loved to have met Hawk. Okay. I would have loved to have met Hawk. But at least I managed to, meet Animal. And when he passed away, I was just like, oh my word, this is sort of incredible. But we have our memories. We have stuff we can share. And the fact that we both ended up meeting Animal and having a good time, it's just, again, one of those weird little coincidences in our life.
Oh, it was. And that's what brings for our guest that we have. Now, I met this guy because I wrote for my blog, I wrote an article of the top 20 greatest Road Warrior collectibles of all time. The link will be down below, right, Niall? Will it be down below?
Right down below, under that subscribe button.
And I did it as a labor of love. And I am thinking I know everything. And this guy contacts me and he says I did a couple things wrong. And I looked at the name. I'm like, is that Hedstrom? And I was like, and all of a sudden I get a little shaky. And I was like, who has the audacity to tell me about the Road Warriors? Ooh, our guest today has the audacity, and we're going to hear everything. I want you ladies and gentlemen out there to know this is an extreme privilege for me, for Steve, for Niall. One of my absolute heroes, the little bouncing baby boy, baby brother of Road Warrior Hawk, Mr. Dan Hedstrom.
Welcome, welcome.
Welcome, Dan. First off, Dan, it's an honor for you to be here. Obviously, as you could tell in the intro, you've been guiding me. I was right there with the Road Warrior Hawk, obsessed, kicked out of school a few times. It was incredible. Now, thank you for being here. Like I said, it's an honor. And obviously, we want to talk about your big brother. But what I want to know from the beginnings and all the way until he got into wrestling. I want to know that whole gap there, your life and times with the legendary Michael Hedstrom, because talking with Animal and talking with all these other wrestlers I've been around, he is so legendarily well known. But I want to know firsthand from somebody who grew up with him and like, my God, Dan Hedstrom, please take us on a journey.
Thanks for having me on, John. I think you know a lot more about his wrestling, I think, than I do. I know him as my brother, so my big brother. But he was, it's probably the perfect fit for my brother to go into wrestling. I mean, just the way he was. He's hyperactive. Probably had attention deficit disorder for sure. But he was very witty, very intelligent. He had a great sense of humor. I mean, what you saw on TV was really my brother. So I think, he's very athletic, but he never played sports. And one of the things that at his funeral, one of his friends said, at the high school football games, Patrick Henry would be losing, 14-0, but Hegstrand was 3-0 under the bleachers. He was a legit badass. I mean, he was a tough guy. I mean, he knew how to throw a punch.
So how was it during the early ages? How much older is Hawk than you?
He's 4 years older.
Okay, so how was those early years like when you're really young and stuff? What was he into? Like, what were you guys doing? And I'd love to just know that dynamic.
I come from a family of 6, so we have my sister's the oldest, and then there's 5 boys. So I'm the youngest of 6. So yeah. They all kind of paved the way for me. So I kind of had it easy. We had great parents. We had a cabin in western Wisconsin that we went to. I mean, in the summer, every weekend we were at the cabin, and so we were, hunting, fishing, swimming, boating, killing things because we were boys, so had BB guns yeah, I mean, it was, he was a great brother to have. I mean, he took care of his little brother on a few occasions, and we'd get into it here and there, and me on the receiving end. I remember one time he punched me. We had gotten a fight, and he punched me and gave me a black eye. And of course, we had to tell the parents that I hit myself on the corner of a table as we were, wrestling.
Yeah, Animal told me that too. It's like he was always like hyperactive. He was like 100 miles per hour all the time, and he was that way even when he was young. Correct?
Oh yep. Yeah, he was busy. So and then he ended up getting into lifting weights, and then and really it was a bouncer, and that's kind of how he met Eddie Sharkey at Grandma B's, a bar in Northeast Minneapolis. That's still a bar now. It's Psycho Susie's. And
Steve, before I give it to Steve, think about this bar that had these bouncers. It was Hawk, Animal, Rick Rude, Barry Dorso, Smash. Nikita Koloff was there.
I think John Nord.
John Nord was there. Nord the Barbarian. There was a few others too. Warlord was there too. He came a little bit after. Can you imagine? And all these guys became some of the biggest superstars ever. And could you imagine being in that bar? Holy moly! Go ahead, Steve. Oh my God.
Well, I mean, I know one thing. You're not going to get unruly there. I can only imagine those giant hands grabbing you. You're going out. They're taking you out the back. I don't care who you are. You're going to go out. But what I'm interested in is, when did he start getting into the life of the gym? When did that happen? Because his physique is, I still think, one of the best wrestling physiques that there was. The thickness, the roundness of his muscles, and the fact that he wasn't so big that he couldn't move.
Yeah,
it's a perfect wrestling body. When did he start going to the gym, and how long did it take for you to notice that, hey, wait a minute, he's getting big?
Yeah, I mean, that was probably shortly after high school. He started, lifting weights. I mean, that wasn't that popular back then. I mean, early 80s to be working out, I guess, or being big and doing that kind of stuff. So I'd say, it was early 80s, right after, after high school, late 70s. He started working out. Yep. And he was a hell of an athlete, really. I mean, I think the guy could have played a middle linebacker in the NFL easily.
Wow.
Go ahead now.
Now, when you guys were growing up, though, like with the dynamics of wrestling, was that ever a thought in, just like playing around wrestling, or were you guys actually going to any local traveling shows or anything like that?
Nope. Never watched wrestling growing up as a family. Never. Yeah. It was just, he said he watched it on TV one day and said, hey, I think I can do that. And that's where Eddie Sharkey worked at Grandma B's too. So that's kind of, Eddie Sharkey had a camp. And that's how a lot of these guys, became a lot of wrestlers from Minneapolis area, Robbinsdale. Yeah.
And he actually was best friends with Scott Norton. And Steve, I don't know if you know Scott Norton. He was on Over the Top. At one time, he was the world arm wrestling champion, and he's actually in Over the Top, that Sylvester Stallone movie. And do you remember? And Hawk and him fought a few times, didn't they? Because they were like the toughest guys from their school, or they had that mutual respect, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of Mike's friends were in high school were first foes and fought, and then became friends. Yeah, I mean, it was just the way he was. I mean, yeah. So they were actually the same grade in high school. Norton and Mike.
Yeah, I mean, just what was in the water with that? Oh my God, can you believe that? But
his whole class of friends. I mean, it was just a bunch of characters. I mean, it's kind of like Welcome Back, Kotter or something. I mean, he has a group of friends that were just all a bunch of goofballs and hung out, and still our pretty close group.
But the first gym he went to was that Jesse the Body Ventura's gym?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That was an old 7-Eleven by our high school that was converted to, Jesse converted into a gym.
Yeah, and what was funny, because Joe told me that they went to a few of their matches. I don't know if Hawk was with that too, but like they went to a few of those matches too, like even before. And Animal says that when they were working out in the gym, Hulk Hogan and Brutus Beefcake came one time, and this was early. And Animal said like, "Oh my God, who's that?" Yeah. And like, so a few years before they started wrestling Hulk Hogan, he actually came to the gym because it was a big pit stop, that gym, correct?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't know. I don't remember ever seeing any celebrities there other than Jesse. But yeah, I mean, I used to work out there too back in the day. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
But so guys, we're going to go into what Dan's done. Now, Dan has done a revolutionary thing. Now, I want to bring up, because Dan, the Road Warriors has so much memorabilia, so much merchandise and stuff. And obviously they have hundreds of posters. Their very first one right back there that that's in my daughter's room, just so you know, and she has it up here. So, but also shirts. There's a million Road Warrior shirts, but Dan here did something pretty revolutionary, that when I used to open up those wrestling magazines, there was an ad in there. There was an ad that for Road Warrior Productions, it was the very first Road Warrior shirt. I could never get it. My parents would never give me $10 to send anything away, but I was like, what is this? And they were made in black, and they were made in white. And this is the very first AWA, the very first Road Warrior t-shirts. And this is when they were the AWA World Tag Team Champions. And just so you know, they won those belts on August 25th of 1984, my 11th birthday. You don't tell, against Baron von Raschke and the Crusher. But this guy right below here made those shirts and made that ad. I couldn't believe it when I talked to you. Tell me all about that, how you got those in the wrestling magazines, and you were selling the very first Road Warrior shirts. Crazy.
That was all really through Mike. I mean, he got me actually into the AWA. So, I mean, I would sell t-shirts at the St. Paul Civic Center when, with Vern Gagne, somehow gave them the blessing to have me come in there and set up booths. And I sold strictly Road Warrior shirts. So obviously they sold shirts too, but and then from there, Mike knew Bill Apter, I think, and got me in that wrestling magazine. And that was something, I'd probably sell, going back, I mean, this is, probably 40, 50 shirts a week, I suppose.
Well, because that's when it was raw. And just so you know, those first appeared in wrestling magazines in December of 1984, and they lasted till the fall of 1985. So, but like I said, it was just so funny that did Vern Gagne ever give you any problems for selling those?
No, because I mean, I think the Road Warriors could kind of write their own ticket, I mean,
yeah, about that time. So it was incredible. So go ahead, Steve. Oh my God.
So I'm sort of curious as to the family dynamic, as to your mom and dad, as to when was the news that, wait a minute, I'm going to go off and I'm going to become a wrestler, and what was the reaction to that?
my mom would have been, she'd passed away already, unfortunately. So my dad was kind of, I mean, I don't know if any of us thought it was going to happen, you know, because he ended up starting, you know, you go up to he's originally wrestled in Canada as Crusher Von Haig.
Yeah.
You know, and then it just kind of snowballed for him, and, you know, timing and being in the right place, right time, and physique and all that stuff, you know, played a role. But yeah, it was, you know, my dad was really always opposed to him lifting weights. You know, my dad would point to his, you know, hey, work this muscle, not the bicep, you know. So I can vividly remember my dad, you know, always on him about that. So I think that probably put a little bit of, you know, maybe motivation in Mike to kind of prove my dad wrong.
Wow. He skyrocketed. From Paul Ellering told me, and he said it best, from 1983 to 1987, there was nothing like that ever in the history of professional wrestling like the Road Warriors. After 87, they started getting so many pretenders, so many copycats, so many mimics. They started mimicking their style, the makeup. Look at this, the Ultimate Warrior and Sting. They would have never made it if they didn't have that makeup on. They were copycats as the Blade Runners. You had Demolition, the Powers of Pain, but also the other wrestlers that mimicked their wrestling style, that smash that was like Doom, APA, the Disciples of Destruction, Harlem Heat. They all mimicked those big guy styles, and the Road Warriors were the first to do that. And it was, they were such trend-setting stuff. And when I asked Animal about this, he just said, yeah, we just did it because they told us to beat up people. And Hawk used to say before they would fight the wrestlers, he goes, sorry, man, but I'm going to have to kick your ass out there. And they would totally crush. If anybody's out there to see those clips of them just beating the crap out of those poor guys, do you ever sit back and watch some of those early stuff having a good time?
Not really. I mean, whatever I see probably is more on Facebook and the Road Warrior, you know, fan pages that, you know, I'm on, which I just was turned on to those a few years ago. And I never, you know, didn't know that the fans that they had. So I was really surprised and kind of amazed that, you know, they were still remembered, really.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. We got a few photos that you sent. Now we're going to put them up sporadically, and I want you to talk about them. So they're wonderful. So now why don't you put up the first one?
That's my dad, and I'm pretty sure that was taken when Mike took him to Japan.
Wow. Oh, and that's another thing that people don't understand, and it's always played down. That drives me nuts. The Road Warriors, when they first came to Japan in 1985, were one of the biggest things ever in wrestling there. It's funny, like I said, they play it down. And Animal told me they had more photographers there than when the Beatles went there. They were because they were like this Godzilla thing, and they became the biggest territorial attraction since Andre. They basically, like, everybody had to see this, because I remember being a kid and, you know, looking at them in the wrestling magazines, and it was just like you just had to see them. Nobody saw people that size move that way and look that way. It was just so good. So now I'll put up another one.
That is Mike's second wife, Dale, that he was married to when he passed away.
Yeah.
And that's up at my brother's. That's up at my brother's lake place and on Rush Lake in northern Minnesota.
Oh,
nice.
That I think was at somebody's bachelor party or something, and that's my brother on the left with the striped sweater, and then my other brother next to him, and then another friend there on the far right there, Jeff Summerson. But yeah, just goofing around back in the day.
He was so much bigger than all your brothers and your father. Like, how the hell was he that big?
Good question. I don't know. You know, it's. Yeah, we really got to, from my brother who was like, 6'3", and I got another brother who's about 6'2". I'm 6 foot, but then then you I got two other brothers that are smaller. Yeah,
it's the funniest thing.
And that's Walter Mondale. That he dated Eleanor Mondale for a while.
Wow.
Wait, I got to throw you under the bus here. This was great. When I was talking to Dan on the phone, I said, did Walter Mondale supposed to be this upstanding politician? And I said to him, I go, and his daughter was seeing Hawk, and Hawk was such a wild man. And Dan says to me, she was wilder than him.
They loved him though, man. I guess, I mean, they'd go to, bring him to these political parties, and he was a huge hit. I mean.
Oh my God.
Well, I could imagine, with the energy of everything and having him there, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, he was a hit wherever he went. I mean, he was just one of those guys that attracted people, and, at times, I don't know what it is with big guys, but people want to fight him too.
That's true.
There were people that always wanted to challenge him, and they usually lost.
Yeah. Go next one now.
That was in Hawaii. Mike took the whole family there. So I'm not taller than him. It's just we're at the beach, so we're kind of at the slope, and I'm on the upper part of the slope. So that's why I'm not 6'3" or 6'4".
Was that when he was coming back from Japan? And then he would.
Yeah, he stopped there a lot, So yeah, when he come back from Japan, they would typically he'd stop and spend a week there, and a lot of times in Maui.
Oh,
yep,
wow.
That's where that was. That was Maui.
Nice.
Yeah.
That was like 1987, I believe.
Wow.
At their peak. Got another one now?
That's my son that he's holding there. So that's probably 1997, 98, probably 97, 98, somewhere in there.
Oh, wow.
And that was WrestleMania out in LA. Now I don't recall what year that was, but we got backstage, and I think that was probably somewhere in the 80s though.
No, I think 90s. It's in the 90s. This is when he was it's sometime in 90, 91, 92. It's got to be within that range.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So
how was Hogan?
Yeah. It was a quick photo shoot. I don't, one of those deals where they don't have a whole lot of time. So it was, I really didn't get a chance to talk to him. But yeah.
Yeah. That's a good question, because I actually, I didn't meet him, but I saw Hulk Hogan at the Pond in 1995. And he had a tremendous amount of people around him. And I remember as he was walking, he had his arms out, and he was just sort of walking like this. And I thought to myself, there's no cameras around. Why is he walking like that? What is he doing? But yeah, definitely, an incredible time. And also from that photograph from your father being taken to Japan, there must have been a realization and a definite amount of pride that, wait a minute, look what my son has accomplished here.
Yeah.
I'm watching him on TV. I'm being taken over to Japan. So it must have been a great sense of pride, basically for both of them, that, this little idea that, wait a minute, I'm going to go off to a training camp. I'm going to be, I'm going to do some wrestling. And, and again, 99.9% of all people who go off and do that, they crash and burn. They don't make it. Something goes wrong. But, your brother turned out to be not only the one that made it through, but to make a huge name. So, did the father ever express this pride?
Oh yeah. That's my dad talked a lot about my brother. And to friends, and it was a pretty cool thing to have, obviously, as your for my father. Yep.
Well, Hawk was the questionable one, though, wasn't he? And then your father probably was like, I don't know what's really going to happen to this one, and then he turned into this icon.
Yeah, Mike was always kind of a troublemaker and a break. Anything, he broke things around the house all the time. Just the way he moved and did things, it always broke. So it was convenient for us because we could blame it on Mike a lot of times too if we broke something. So.
Yeah. And then I was into the wrestling until 92. And then I started getting out of it. And I didn't really that's when Hawk and Animal kind of split. And Hawk went to Japan with the Hellraisers stuff. And I started getting out at that time, out of wrestling. And then I wasn't into the new generation. I didn't even like the Attitude Era stuff because I hated when it got all provocative. And so I totally got out of wrestling for years. And then then in like 1998, I just happened to see a Raw on TV, and I see Hawk. I was like, oh, the Road Warriors are back there. Like I just didn't think of them for many years, and he's getting pushed off the Titantron. They make him act like an idiot, and I was like, oh, what happened? I was like, this is terrible. And then I stopped. And then a few years later, I'm teaching now. And I remember it's in October, and I turn on the computer and all that stuff. Haven't thought about the Road Warriors or wrestling for years now. And when I turn on, I see this little thing on the computer of the news thing. And it was October 19th, 2003. And I was like, your brother passes away at 46 years old. And I remember everything came back to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, what? It took me back, and I went back to all the older stuff. You know, you recollect that stuff because, you know, I grew up with him. He was one of those things. How was the news of that because I know he passed away in Florida. He was moving stuff for his wife, and then he slept on the couch, and he passed away in his sleep. And Animal said, Mike told me, like, out of think about this, Steve. He had 9 near-death experiences, Hawk. That's how wild he was. But in the last year of his life, he became a born-again Christian, and he got himself completely straight. And even the toxicology found nothing in his blood, and he passed away peacefully. I mean, as hardship that was for your brother to pass, he went off on a good note and at peace. Tell me about the news when you heard about Mike passing and stuff.
Well, it was, totally unexpected. One of those ones. I mean, it just hits you like a brick wall. So yeah, it was tough. Yeah, it was. Just, you know, he had his heart issues. He knew he had an enlarged heart, and he was, he understood that part, but it wasn't, I don't think he or anyone else knew that it was, it was going to be that imminent that he was, so it was quite the shock. Yeah, it's still hard. Yeah.
It like for me too, it was like a piece of me too, that my childhood, and it's just like, you thought he was going to live forever, you thought he was going to be, but the thing is, he is forever. Like, he's a caricature and he's a person, but that his stuff is still out there, and it still inspires people that it'll never go away. You got your Hulk Hogan, you got your Randy Savage, you got your Ric Flair, some of those immortal people at the top, like the Andre the Giant, and you'll always have the Road Warriors. And one of the funny things is, when I worked with Animal, he liked me because I was telling people, like, I was selling the Road Warriors, and he said to me, he goes, why are you selling us so hard? And I go, because I love you. I told him, because I love you. And he cracked up because he couldn't believe it. And that's why, like I said, we went out to eat, and he told my friend, like, I like this kid. He knew I could hustle and all that stuff. But that's what he said to me too, that he said that it was so heartfelt for him with Hawk. He goes, but he went in peace though. And it was almost like that's how it had to be with him. And it's just such a hard thing, but a magical thing. Like, it was beautiful. And it was so good to hear that too, and stuff, that he went that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think he probably is always religious. I mean, we grew up Catholic, and so I think it was, maybe coming full circle a little bit for him to come back. And but he was, you think of all the partying he did in his lifetime, and that, survived all that. And obviously the steroids, played a part in his heart issue, and as others have had, similar experience. So
but for him,
it was the best fit ever, though. I mean, I don't know what else he could have done in life, and did, and had as much fun, and did. I mean, he did in his 46 years, he did way more than I'll ever do. That's for sure.
Wow. Go ahead now.
Yeah. So, with your brother, getting into the industry and building this fame and everything, did you ever look at wrestling like that for yourself, or ever wanting to be a part of that entertainment world?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of, thought about it, and probably definitely would have had an opportunity if I wanted to, but I didn't have that kind of personality. I mean, you got to be kind of flamboyant and out there, and that, you know, it's not me. So I think but that I'll leave it there. I never pursued it or did anything, but I was, back in the day, I had a pretty good physique. So not that I was, huge by any means, but I did lift back in the day. But yeah, it wasn't a fit for me.
Yeah. Did you get to travel with him, like while they were touring with the wrestling shows and stuff?
Yeah, I went on the road with him just one time. Yeah, I remember. I guess I remember JYD, Junkyard Dog, was kind of my favorite on the road there. My nickname was Sparrow. But yeah, it was. Other than that, just went to all the matches. Obviously, here when he wrestled at at Civic Center and stuff like that. So all the big matches. That was always fun.
Yeah. And so where did life lead you? What type of career or did you get into?
I've been a realtor for 33 years.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I've had rental properties, I've rehabbed homes. So it's pretty much been real estate my whole life. Just moved here 3 months ago. I was living Northeast Minneapolis, kind of did the downsized about 6-7 years ago, had to raise the kids in the suburbs, and then went back to Minneapolis. We actually grew up North Minneapolis. The dark side of the ring had it wrong. It's North Minneapolis, not Northeast Minneapolis. But my wife is from Northeast, so we lived Northeast Minneapolis, and then our son bought our house, and now I moved to out of the suburb again.
Nice.
Yeah. Go ahead, Steve.
The funny thing is, John, I was still an avid watcher of wrestling, and I do remember when the Road Warriors came back to one of the biggest pops ever to the WWE. And I remember being very excited, and I was like, wow, because there we were, we were in the Attitude Era, and I was like, well, if you want to talk about attitude, these guys were born to be an attitude. And it's like, okay, now let's get rocking and rolling. And again, the dark side of the ring got into a little bit of it, some of the personal problems that were going on. But I do remember that episode where Hawk had climbed up the thing on the Titantron, and they were like, okay, what are you doing? He's like, like suicidal, and threw himself off. And I remember thinking to myself, what are you guys doing? Why? What on earth? You have the Road Warriors here, okay? Just a license to print money. The whole new generation that were ready to go, wow, who are these guys? Wait a minute, why is he smacking, Shawn Michaels around? What? Wait a minute, how come Steve Austin's being thrown out of the ring by these monsters? Okay, we didn't get any of that.
No.
Okay, we didn't get any of that. We got that stupid story. And I remember, and I'm nowhere near as fanatical as you, John, about the Road Warriors. But even I was like, really? That's the way you're going to treat these guys? Yeah. So to me, that was, very sad. And again, a lost opportunity. But I'm fully aware of heart problems. I had my own heart problems. And I know how things can happen because, I was big for many years. I was over 300 pounds for a long time. And stuff like that can get in there, and you may clean up and lose weight and come off and be nice and clean, but your heart is enlarged and scarred, and it becomes fragile. And for me, again, the only way that I can think about it is he was never frail. He never got to a point where he was in a wheelchair or anything like that. It was like, I'm here, I'm doing this stuff, and then he was gone. So again, it's like, oh my word, this powerhouse, obviously you're right, this engine of energy just going, whoa, 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 for years. So, and he did, in that 46 years, I mean, he filled an entire room of archives of VHS and DVD and books and magazines with his face. And you're right, he is going to live forever. The only consoling thing that I have, the way I think about it, he never got to be infirm. He never got to be fragile. He never, turning up at a show, being in a wheelchair. He never had to go through any of that. I don't think, and you're obviously better to answer this, I don't think he could have taken that.
I agree. I think, I don't know, a lot of people I don't realize, but these guys are wrestling 300 days a year.
Mm-hmm.
And in a ring, on the road, traveling. His body would have been so beat up if he would have been, in his 60s right now. You'd have a tough time with it.
I know if you see Hogan has a cane now and all that stuff. And not to mention, Hawk also overcame hepatitis C, and he was on interferon for years after that too. Think about that. And he never complained. That's what Animal told me. He never complained, and Animal didn't even know for a while too that he was on that still. And Hawk still getting into fights, still doing his wild stuff on interferon. That guy was nuts. But and here's another thing I wanted to ask you, Dan, that on September 22nd, 2020, a few years ago, Animal passes at a resort, and 10 days after his birthday, his 60th birthday, but he passes away the same way, exact way Hawk did, in his sleep, having a cardiac arrest, like a little mini heart attack, and he passed away. So, what did you hear the news when Joe died? When did you hear that news?
I was from the Facebook group. I turned my phone on that morning and I started getting these, emails and texts and saying, "Hey, is it true?" The first thing I did was I turned on KQRS, which is our local rock and roll station, Tom Bernard. And, they're talking about it on that, so that's kind of how I, that morning, heard about it. And I mean, it was pretty much a hour and a half, rendition of talking about the Road Warriors on that show. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was just so ironic how that happened. But it's almost storybook, it was such a great, I know it's sad, but it was such it's almost like a comic book, like a story. And it was like it was a great thing on their legacy, how they both went the same way and stuff. And I just remember that too. And once again, another piece of my childhood went in the air, and I've never really been into wrestling much anymore, but I always go back, and I brought up my poor daughter and all this stuff too, like the older stuff. And I want to ask you, you said your children, do they know who your brother was? Do they know what he was?
Yeah, but they were really young when he passed away, unfortunately. So I mean, they were 5 and 7 years old. So they really, at that time he was living in Florida. So, I mean, they have a recollection of him, but unfortunately.
Yeah, but they might walk past a store and there's a poster of him, or there's a toy of him.
Yeah. They were down at out at a restaurant one night, and they're playing a video game, and and they sent me a picture. That the Road Warriors are on here. So yeah.
Oh my God! Like that's like that.
Well,
it's
gaming really keeps the memory alive. I mean, they're in every new WWE game or whatnot. They're all in there. I mean, you can't not have them. I mean, I remember I was 5 years old, right? And I was like, I thought Ultimate Warrior was a badass. And all of a sudden, I remember this kid, Mike Pagini. It was his birthday. And we went there, and I'm there, and I'm like, I'm Ultimate Warrior, and they're like, I'm Hogan. And then they come out like, we're the Road Warriors. And they had the foam, for like little kids. They had like little foam spikes and stuff. And I was like, what is that? Like, what? And then I was like, after I saw that, I was like, freaking the Ultimate Warrior is nothing. They don't have the spikes. They don't have anything. It was so cool to see that, because no one wrestler, was wearing anything like that. I just couldn't believe it. And still to this day, I remember that birthday party, because that's how I was introduced to it. And it was a punch in the face for 5-6-year-old Niall. And seeing these guys. And after that, it was like, I still love Ultimate Warrior. I'm not gonna, and unfortunately, John, I liked Sting too. Maybe it was just face paint. Maybe that was my thing. But still, man, Road Warriors, man, when they came in, was like,
did you like the what about the Warlord?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, the Warlord too, but I still wasn't. It's kind of at the
And
bottom.
Animal
of
got the Warlord into the wrestling too. It was Animal.
I talked when I met Animal because I love the Warlord. When I was a kid, the Warlord I think is 6'5", and he was 330. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, I'm 6'3". So if I'm 6'3" and I get to 330 and I go over to California, I can be like the Warlord. You know, so again, similar hair thing as Hawk style. I remember he came out with that little, what was that little staff he had? You know, the Warlord. He came out with that. So it's just, it drips nostalgia. And, you know, those guys will live forever. And they get name checked all the time. Every new tag team that comes along and they're like, yeah, we're the best ever. And they'll name check the Steiner brothers or the Road Warriors. Okay, so it doesn't matter how, 1,000 years from now, as long as if there's wrestling, someone's going to name check them or someone's going to come along and say, we're the best since or we're even better than. Okay, and everyone's going, Road Warriors? I don't think so, buddy. You know, because I actually brought that up to Scott Steiner when I met him in Chicago as well. And I was like, I said, hey, man, I said, you were probably the second best tag team ever, right? And he was like, He goes, Road Warriors, right? And I was like, come on, right? I said, I give you your due. I give you your due when you put the chainmail on. But when it comes to tag teams, you know, and he laughed and smiled with me, you know. But yeah, I did mention it to him. So,
awesome. That's awesome. So that's what. But I just got a little thing here to show you, Dan. Just so, because originally when I show this is the Road Warriors' very first cover from.
I have that magazine.
Right, from March 1984. But this is something that I want all wrestling fans out there to notice. This right here is actually the very first time they're ever mentioned on the cover of a magazine. This is from November of 1983. And though Animal appeared in a few pictures as the Road Warrior in some magazines, this is actually the first article ever on the Road Warriors right here. So what's beautiful about that, I just want wrestling fans to know, if they ever want to get the Road Warriors' very first true appearance, it's November of 1983 Main Event magazine and all that stuff too.
That was the Village people luck.
It took a little while to get things gelled. There was an odd little look there. You know, it was like, wait a minute, Judas Priest. Like, okay, you know.
Okay, in wrapping this up, Dan, well, thank you for your time. I do want to tell you that you're here, and I want to tell you the other guys my greatest Road Warrior story. Obviously, in the intro, I had a few stories, but this one is going to really turn you up, because when I told Animal this, I always wanted to tell him, and he cracked up and he said, "Oh my God!" It just impressed him so bad. But back in obviously. In 1987, obviously, NWA was always down south and stuff. It never came to the Northeast. That was the WWF's territory. So I never really got to see him. So watching TBS, it said that they were coming to Boston, the NWA, on the exact date, April 4th. And it was a few weeks away. And I was like, oh my God, I'm 14 years old. And I'm like, I gotta go. Obviously, my parents are not going to take me or anything, but I just had it in my head. I'm going to see the Road Warriors. I have to. So for about 2 weeks, I started, saving the lunch money, and I scrounged up money, and I made about $15. Then on that Saturday, I shut the door in my room. My parents never bothered me. Once that door was shut, they never bothered me. I snuck out of my window. And when I landed down, I had my scooter ready. Remember those scooters back in the day? You had the one scooter. I took it all the way to the T station. I took my scooter and I shoved it in the bushes, and I waited for the T. I knew it went into Boston. So I paid the T guy and I said, I just need to get to the Boston Gardens, 14 years old. And he goes, all right. It was the last stop. I get off the T and I'm walking there in Boston. And I got to remember, this is 1987. New York and Boston was a hellhole. I'm 14 years old. So I went into a CVS and I got one of those cheap little cameras, those Polaroids and all that stuff. And I remember walking to the Boston Gardens, and all I'm thinking is, I gotta see Hawk, gotta see Animal. And this was the first time I ever saw a scalper. A scalper came up to me and they're like, "Hey, you want the tickets for the match?" And I got scared. I just kept going. So I remember going to the ticket booth and I said, "I'll have one for the Road Warriors." It was my last $10. I kind of made it because the camera cost me like almost $5, and the ticket cost me like $10. And I remember I got it. So anyways, I get that. I'm walking in there and they give you a program. So Niall put the first one up. This is the actual program of that night. And if you see that there, I also marked off some of the people that didn't show up, but right there, the special grudge tag team attraction, the Road Warriors versus the Midnight Express. And I put who won and who lost. So anyways, I'm okay. So I'm walking in there. I sit down and I don't have the greatest seats. I'm kind of far from the ring. And I look up and I see on the balcony right over the ring, perfect seat. It's my social studies teacher, Mr. Lucenti. And he's there with his wife and his 2 kids. And he's looking at me and he starts laughing at me because he had better seats than me. He goes, "Ah," and I can see him laughing at me. So anyways, he starts looking at me for a while and we're waiting because the show hasn't started yet. I'm just taking it all in. And I see him. All I hear is, "John, John." I look up and it's Mr. Lucenti. He goes, "Meet me over there." So I walk over there and he comes down. He goes, "Where the hell are your parents? Who the hell are you here with?" And I said, "I snuck out of my house. I don't know." I go, I don't know. I came to see the Road Warriors." He goes, "How the hell are you getting home?" "I don't know. I don't have a clue," and all that stuff. And he goes, "Are you nuts?" He goes, "Meet me right here at the end after the matches, and we're gonna do it." And I said, okay. He goes, "Oh my God, you crazy bastard!" Because I was always a hyperactive kid too. So anyways, he goes back. The matches begin. It sucked because the wrestlers came in from the other side, but yet Niall showed the first one from my cheap camera. There's your brother right there on the top of the ropes. I got him as a little kid against and then the next one now. And I got Animal right there from my cheap camera. I was seeing them in Iron Man, hearing Iron Man as a little 14-year-old. It was incredible. It was one of the highlights of my life. So anyways, the matches get over. I meet Mr. Lucente. He starts driving me home. And the whole way there, he's telling me, "John," he goes, I said, "Please don't tell my father. They're going to kill me." He says to me, "You better do great on your school. Don't miss a day." And he goes, "You better study." And he goes, "And none of your wise lip," because I've always had a mouth on me. I was a punk. And he goes, "None of your wise for the." Yeah. I go, "For the rest of the year." And he's yelling at me, and his kids and his wife are in the car. And I felt so embarrassed. He actually stops at the T station. He's getting my scooter out of the bushes. He puts it in the back. He's swearing and all that stuff. Anyways, he lets me go. I see the Road Warriors and all that stuff. It was great. And I was great for the rest of the year. But a few months later, this comes out. Niall? This wrestling magazine, and if you look what I circled up there, it says Bedlam in Beantown, the NWA invades the Boston Garden. When I saw that in the wrestling magazine, now I'm not in that picture, but I was at that event. And at that time, that was incredible because you never knew. So I'm going around the school. I was here. That's me. I was there. And then I go to Mr. Lucenti. I go, "Come on." He goes, "What are you doing now, John?" I go, "Look, we're in the magazine. And he says to me, he goes, "You crazy son of a bitch." He goes, "Yeah, it is cool. It was cool." He was happy for me and all that stuff. So I told Animal this story. Like I said, it was just such an incredible moment in my life. 14 years old. I had to see him. So their peak years was 86 and 87. So I got to see that. I got a little tear because nothing was going to stop me from seeing your brother. And my parents would have killed me. I would have got killed. But I got to see them on that day. And it's an honor for me to show you those pictures because when they came back, because you had to send out the pictures, and when they came back, I was like, what? It was like, that was me. And there were terrible pictures, but that was me, and that was my life. And I wanted you to know that, because it's an honor for me to have you here, because the little John Cimino in me is going cuckoo. And I meet a lot of celebrities, all the big people on the superheroes, all the big creators. There's a few people, and I just want to tell you, meeting you and getting to know you and being honored to call you friend is one of the greatest thrills of my life, because I, honestly, man, your brother meant the world to me, and having you here is truly an honor, and I thank you for coming on this. And I know you don't really do this, but it's an absolute honor. So Niall, any last words to Mr. Hedstrom?
No, just thank you for coming on and, sharing some of your stories and, experience of your brother. I know it's very intimate and personal, and, they really changed an industry with what they did. They brought an energy that wasn't anything that was going on. And, as Steve said, I mean, this will echo on for generations and generations. And it's cool that you're able to, take time to talk about it, because there's a lot of fans out there still. So thank you again. Appreciate it.
Steve?
Yeah, as I said, it is an honor to have you here. Obviously, you're a private person. This is not something you go around doing all the time. So again, I'd like to extend my gratitude for coming here and having to put up with John's screaming and shouting. But again, it's just a feeling that we can share. And again, I've said this many times, I'm not like a religious nut or anything, but I just feel that upstairs, okay, every now and again, both of them feel this flush of heat, because someone is talking, someone is telling a story, and they can feel it, and they're like, whoa, who's talking about us now? They can come down, they can look down, oh, it's Cimino again, getting carried away. So again, thank you so much. And, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I hope you also get to feel that this love that's coming his way.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you having me on, and it's great, that we're keeping the memory of the Road Warriors alive. And so it's, to me, he was my brother. So it's a lot different experience for me than, for you guys as fans. So, but it's, it's very cool. Yeah. Very cool.
Thank you so much. And hey, he was my brother too. I believe that. He was my brother. So hey, Dan, why don't you give us a "Oh What a Rush" before Steve gets us out of here? Can you give me one?
Oh, what a rush! Not as good as Hawks, but
oh!
We snack on danger, we dine on death, and dead men don't make money.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us on Pop XP. If you haven't already, make sure to click that subscribe button and also click the bell for notifications when we go live and we upload some awesome new content. Also, don't forget to head on over to Twitter and follow us at the Pop XP and over on Instagram at the Pop XP. Thanks again everyone, and we'll see you soon.